Welcome to today's lecture on perspective and scene design. This lecture is brought to you by Lake Minneola High School, and it is designed for the Game Simulation and Animation Foundations course. Our central question is, how do players react to game perspectives and scene design? And we must first look at our player immersion. Player immersion is defined as the degree to which a player connects with the virtual world, and it is often referred to as the zone. Developers aim to increase player immersion to create interesting games that stimulate and challenge the player. They aim to increase the gameplay and the replay value of their game. Next, we must look at perspectives. The player's position on the screen that allows the player to view the game events is the perspective. It can be either first, second, or third person, and player perspective may be changeable with the use of a control on the user interface, such as a switch view button, or a control or an in-game preference. First, looking at first-person perspective. First-person perspective is where the player sees through the character's eyes. It is very similar to a head-mounted camera, and it is common gameplay perspective for a shooter-based game such as first-person shooters, as well as some other genres. Next, we have our second person. This one is very rarely used in games, but may be seen in some sports games. It is also where the game events are seen through the eyes of the opponent. An example of this type of perspective is seen where you have a player in a baseball game as seen from the pitcher's perspective. Third person perspective is where the game events are viewed from the eyes of a spectator. Usually you have a viewing angle that is including, but it may not be limited to, an overhead view, a profile or platform type of view, behind or over the shoulder type of view. And often this type of perspective is seen in racing and sports games, but it's also seen in other genres. So as a quick summary for perspectives, we can see that if you're seeing from the character, it's more like a head-mounted camera. It's first person. If you're seeing from the opponent, it's second person, and it's more like the opponent's head-mounted camera. And third person would be if you're seeing from a spectator's position, and this could have multiple camera angles, but is not limited to overhead, behind, and over the shoulder, or profile and platform. Moving on to scenes, we can see that scenes are used to contain the game world objects that convey the story to the players. It coordinates the storyline with the game objects, the colors, the mood, etc. And if it is well designed, players will find the scenes attractive. What this does is it helps to promote game immersion. So how do we design our scenes? Well, scene design depends on the following elements to convey the story and increase game immersion. And the elements would be objects, the theme, the mood, etc. And scene layouts should place objects in a way where the scene is distributed to accent the mood of the game. Do not place objects in just one area. Spread out your objects. Use the environment. So what are objects? Well, scene objects begin at the start menu. We see the placement of controls and text objects. Typically, we see buttons. And we also have objects placed in the foreground and background. There are different types of objects. You could have active, which is an interactive and it may be programmed, such as weapons, buttons, etc. You could have background objects, which are non-interactive, such as the sky. And you could have backdrop objects. Backdrops are semi-interactive, but they do not damage or reward the player, such as walls. Moving to the theme. The theme is used to establish the game's backstory and storyline. The scenes are supposed to support the theme, and what happens with the scenes is they may be themed according to historical periods, cultural elements, religion and or mythology, holidays, the list goes on. Setting the mood is very important for a game. So the mood of a game helps the player to get into a very specific state of mind. This is used to increase player immersion, and the mood can be conveyed via objects, colors, and it taps into the player's subconscious to respond to those very specific game events. Looking at just color psychology for a moment, color psychology is used to develop color schemes used throughout the game. And as we can see, we have positive and negatives with each of our colors. So, for example, blue. A positive response to blue would be trust, duty, a sense of calm, whereas a negative would be coldness, unfriendliness, etc. And what we're looking at when we're creating something with the color blue is we're trying to convey a message to that person, to the player who's actually looking at this game object, this game event, maybe even a game character. Moving on with the mood, we can see we have form psychology as well as color psychology. Form psychology is used to develop object designs that will be used throughout gameplay. And as an example, we can see if an object is circular, the player's immediate response would be a sense of friendship, a sense of caring, sense of support, and a sense of protection. Likewise, if you use something such as a square, rectangle, or pyramid, you're building a sense of stability, strength, power, balance, and even reliability. Notice towards the bottom, soft curves give the player an immediate response of maybe a rhythm, a movement, a sense of happiness, a sense of pleasure, and a sense of generosity. Whereas sharp angled lines give the player an immediate response of energy, liveliness, being young, explosive, violent, anger, rapidity, dynamic, and movement. What this is saying is, if you're designing a game, if you're designing a scene, if you're designing an object, what you need to do is really focus on what is the goal of your game. If you're designing a shooter game, typically you're going to use more of the sharp angled lines. However, if you're creating a kid-friendly game, such as something that would be ranked as E10 and under, what you would really need to look at is something that has a lot of soft curves, something that's rounded and a promotion of happiness. So at this point, please rank yourself as far as understanding of the material. If you feel you need to review the material once again, please do so. And if you have any questions, please contact your instructor.